Alias returned to the church early the next morning, his curiosity outweighing any lingering apprehension. The forest seemed quieter than usual, the stillness pressing against his ears. As he approached the clearing, he noticed the faint outline of Kai sitting on the church steps, his presence as unchanging as the stone beneath him. "Good morning," Alias greeted, his voice soft but steady. He didn't expect a verbal response, but Kai's slight nod reassured him. Alias settled on the steps a few feet away, pulling out his notebook and pencil. "I was thinking," he began, "about how this place feels like it exists outside of time. Do you ever feel that way?" The boy didn't answer, but his gaze shifted to the forest beyond the church. Alias followed his line of sight, noting the way the light filtered through the trees, illuminating motes of dust that seemed to hang suspended in the air. There was something undeniably ethereal about this place. As the morning wore on, Alias continued his observations, jotting down notes and sketches. The boy remained silent but attentive, his presence a quiet anchor. It wasn't until Alias began examining the moat that he noticed something unusual. The water, which had seemed unnaturally clear before, now shimmered with faint ripples, as if disturbed by an unseen force. Alias called, glancing over his shoulder. "Have you ever noticed anything strange about the water?" The boy hesitated before nodding, his expression unreadable. He stood and walked to the edge of the moat, his bare feet soundless on the grass. Kneeling, he dipped his fingers into the water, sending out concentric ripples. Alias watched closely, his heart quickening as he noticed the faint glow emanating from where Kai's hand touched the surface. "It reacts to you," Alias murmured, crouching beside him. "Why?" He withdrew his hand and sat back on his heels, his eyes downcast. Alias resisted the urge to press him for answers, sensing that his silence was not a refusal but a limitation. Instead, he retrieved his flask and offered it to the boy, who accepted it with a small nod of thanks. As they sat in companionable silence, a sudden rustling in the forest broke the stillness. Alias tensed, his instincts honed from years of exploration. He rose to his feet, scanning the tree line. "Stay here," he instructed, his voice firm. Stepping cautiously toward the edge of the clearing, Alias peered into the shadows. The rustling grew louder, accompanied by a low, guttural sound that sent a shiver down his spine. He stepped halfway across the barrier marked by the moat, his curiosity pushing him forward. The boy's hand shot out, grabbing his arm and yanking him back into the barrier's protection. The movement was swift, almost desperate. Alias stumbled, his heart racing as he turned to look at Kai, whose grip was firm and unyielding. Kai's wide eyes and tense expression spoke volumes. Alias had made a dangerous mistake. Before Alias could question him, a figure emerged from the undergrowth. It wasn't human. The creature was shadowy and amorphous, its form shifting like smoke. Two faintly glowing eyes pierced the darkness, locking onto Alias. His breath caught as the air around him grew colder, a palpable wave of malevolence washing over him. "What in the—" Alias whispered, taking a step back. The creature let out a bone-chilling hiss, but it stopped short at the edge of the barrier, its form wavering. The glow from the moat intensified, casting eerie reflections across the clearing. Alias watched in awe as Kai stepped forward, his slender frame radiating an unexpected strength. The creature hissed again before retreating into the shadows, its form dissolving into the darkness. Kai lowered his hand, his shoulders sagging with visible relief. Alias stared at him, a dozen questions tumbling through his mind. What was that? He finally managed. He did not answer. Instead, he turned and walked back to the church, his movements deliberate and measured. Alias followed, his heart pounding. Inside the church, the boy sat on one of the old wooden pews, his posture tense. Alias sat beside him, struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. "You're protecting this place," Alias said quietly, the realization dawning on him. "That's why you're here, isn't it? To keep whatever that thing was from." "What? Escaping?" His silence spoke volumes. Alias exhaled, rubbing his temples. "I need to understand. If I'm going to help you, if I'm going to protect you, I need to know the truth." For the first time, the boy looked directly at him, his eyes filled with an emotion Alias couldn't quite name. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, placing it in Alias's hand. It was a stone, smooth and cold, etched with strange symbols that seemed to pulse faintly under his touch. "What is this?" Alias asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The boy's lips parted, as if he might finally speak, but no sound came out. Instead, he pressed his hand over Alias's, closing his fingers around the stone. The message was clear. This was important. This was the key. Alias nodded, his resolve hardening. Whatever secrets the church and its silent guardian held, he was determined to uncover them. Together, they would face the shadows and the truths hidden within.